This is the DRS train.
Of all the episodes for A Shield to miss, I'm Peter Brook, I'm joined by Ciaron Smith, and you're listening to the DRS Train podcast. So, Monza, bit of a blinder by Ferrari there. That was, pulled off a blinder similar to Mercedes, only this time it was legal. And yeah, the scenes at the end of the race on the podium and everything, for me, that's really what matters and really what makes Formula One great.
Absolutely. It was breathless scenes, a bit like you after playing the national anthem. And it was, just one of these iconic moments for everyone involved and for the fans and the people watching. There's no podium. There's no sporting event, really, like the Italian Grand Prix at Monza. I mean, I struggle to think of a single sporting event that has that kind of passion, class, excitement, and true, genuine love towards a venue. It's historic. So that was great, and I really think that Ferrari pulled one from under the rug. They pulled a rabbit out of the hat, and that came due to two reasons: superior strategy from the team, and a phenomenal drive by Charles Leclerc. It has to be said. So. Pretty impressive stuff, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, going into this, particularly after qualifying, I was looking at it and thinking it's so close with that top four that almost anyone could take it. I still didn't think Ferrari would take it. I thought McLaren looked like they've got this. They've locked out the front row. We saw what they did in Zandvoort. They've had the fastest car for 8 or 9 races now. And then everyone suddenly clicked on it. And you could see it in the crowds, the cheering, once they worked out, okay, Leclerc's not pitting again, and he's making this work. It's just surprising that Ferrari of all people managed to do this. But the main thing that stood out, other than Leclerc's supreme performance, was the fact that Sainz went 4 laps longer on the medium, so he had a very long stint. And his tires were 4 laps younger, but they fell off so much faster, and he dropped from 2nd to 4th in the end.
Exactly. That was what was so impressive about Charles Leclerc's drive. I mean, yes, at the beginning he picked off Norris, but then he dropped behind Norris, didn't he? After the stops, and he lost out to the undercut. And like you said, Sainz had fresher tires, but somehow Leclerc on a one stop kept his lap times competitive, and even when he was under pressure from Piastri, he didn't make any mistakes. He crucially didn't lock up and flat spot his tires, which some others did, and mandating them to basically go from a one stop to a two stop. He kept his tires in good condition, didn't make any mistakes, kept his composure, and he fully deserved this win. I really think it was one of his greatest ever drives, because the stigma in the past has sometimes been that Charles Leclerc struggles with tire management or isn't as good as Carlos Sainz in some of these areas. And this was completely blown out of the water today. I mean, he was absolutely on it. And this is very promising for Ferrari because last year tire management was their big weakness. Now it's one of their advantages. This was amazing. And none of the other front runners could really match what Charles did. And all I want to say to round this off is this is the kind of thing that winning teams do. They have trust in their driver. The driver doesn't make any mistakes, and they take risks. And in the end, Charles Leclerc and Ferrari took a risk that McLaren, Lando Norris, and Oscar Piastri couldn't, and it paid off. That's what a winning team does. Super.
Yeah, I mean, this could well be his best win, maybe his best race ever. I mean, this is his 7th win. If you look at the previous ones, so Belgium 2019, well, that was technically the illegal engine. Bit of a muted one because it was the day after the death of Hubert. Then Monza was the next one. Again, illegal engine, but he held off Hamilton and Bottas for basically the whole race. He didn't just storm out into the front. He didn't win a race again until 22, I think, wasn't it, after that? So he took Bahrain. Obviously, there was that battle with... He made Max look kind of oafish in their battles together. And then McLaren had the double mechanical failure. Australia, he just led from the front and won by a massive margin again after Max broke down. That's 4. The 5th win was Austria in 22. Again, they just worked the tyres better than Red Bull. And then Monaco, for him, obviously was a great win, but my God, that was boring. And it was just... That's how he seems to love winning, is the slowest possible pace. That race felt like it would never end. And then today, because this was so unexpected, I mean, I think all the other wins have come from pole or second. So he started 4th today. And I didn't think, I thought, okay, he'll be on the podium because, George had a crappy start and that, but I thought they're going to pit again, they're not going to win, because he was complaining after his first pit stop as well, because he got undercut by Norris, and he was like, well, why did we just pit now if we ended up behind them again? And so I was like, oh yeah, we're falling into this trap of Ferrari strategies.
Exactly. And I think it was just so unexpected in a way because he did suffer from a little bit of graining on his front left in the beginning of the race. And what happened was, McLaren tried to do a one-stop with one of their drivers in Lando, but Lando locked up his tires, his front left. And that forced them to switch to a two-stop. So Leclerc really benefited because he didn't make a crucial mistake like that. It was almost like everybody else was, up and down. Piastri was very fast in the final stint. But at the end of the day, it was Charles, as I mentioned before, that really just kept it clean, didn't really make any mistakes. The team made an amazing strategy call. So it was also interesting to see how much better Charles managed his tires than Carlos. And it was just crazy. It was odd to see him just continue and maintain his pace while Carlos dropped off. And Ferrari had amazing straight line speed on top of that. So at the end of the day, he had the combination of good straight line speed, and he also had great tire management. So super impressive. I really have to say this. To me, this is his most impressive win, because if you actually look at the data, Piastri was 4/10 quicker on average in the race than Leclerc, but he still finished behind him. And it really comes down to like Charles making the difference. Norris again was very quick pace in the race, but he was just nowhere. But we'll get to McLaren shortly here. I just think people need to take a step back and recognize Charles Leclerc's brilliance. Yeah, he's tremendously fast. He's one of the best qualifiers, if not the best. But I still think that his weakness is in these intermediate conditions. It's not really relevant to this race, but I've just seen him make way too many mistakes in the wet, especially in inter tires. That still makes me a little bit worried. If we have a championship where there are a few winter races, he tends to drop the ball there. But today I think is the last day I'm ever gonna even bring up any questions about his tire management, because I think he's put that to bed. He is a phenomenal driver when it comes to managing the tires, I think. And at the end of the day, he did what his rivals just could not today. So credit to him. Unfortunately, I have less complimentary things to say about McLaren. Before I do that, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
I mean, I don't think that Leclerc's performance today is going to become. I'm not convinced it's going to become a recurring theme for the rest of the season. But to be honest, he has, for the most part this year, he's actually been extremely consistent. I mean, if you look at his results, he's got 4th, 3rd, 2nd, 4th, 4th, 3rd, 3rd, 1st, retired 5th, 11th, 14th, 4th, 3rd, 3rd, 1st. So on the races where everything's working properly, he's actually been very, very consistent. Now, Canada was a train wreck. I can't remember what was going on in Austria for him to finish 11th, and then with Sainz 3rd. Or wasn't that they messed up qualifying and he got eliminated in Q1, didn't he? Something like that. And then Silverstone was, another Ferrari strategy masterclass. Other than that, he's been extremely consistent. And you have to think that everyone's looking at Lando as the main title challenger to Max. Leclerc, he's 86 points behind. I mean, you never know. It could. But it's theoretically, with 8 races remaining, it is theoretically possible if Red Bull continue to just flatline like this. It's unlikely, but I wouldn't rule them out just yet.
Yeah, the problem is that they don't really have the fastest car. I mean, people need to realize that McLaren had the quickest car this weekend. Ferrari just did a better job. Ferrari have a better driver, and that's going to be hard to replicate, as you said. I'm sure that it won't be at every race. And also remember, there was new asphalt put down this weekend in Monza, so that made it more tricky for teams to gauge tire wear and adapt to the surface. So I think when we go to the other circuits where the surface is a more known quantity, there'll be less surprises like this, and it will come down to the raw speed of the cars in determining the pecking order. So I tend to agree with your initial statement. I don't think he's going to fight for the title this year, but it could happen. But I'll tell you what, McLaren should be fighting for the title, and they just seem to find new ways to make their life more difficult and throw away points and victories. What a performance that was, and I don't mean that in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, after qualifying, I was thinking, okay, this could be the turning point in the championship, because Lando's on pole, Verstappen's down in 6th or 7th, so I was like, yeah, this is a chance for him to gain a huge, probably he could dig almost 20 points into his points lead here. But then guess what? He loses the lead at the start. The first chicane, isn't it, to Oscar? Or no, second chicane, Oscar very aggressively passes him. And then the first Lesmo, Leclerc does the same and he's down in 3rd. And then he just kind of spends the rest of the race complaining. I mean, after that, though, that was interesting because Oscar really made a big statement, though, because he didn't suddenly fall back. He was clearly on the pace and oftentimes faster than Lando. He played the tyres better. It's just that it still shocks me that he didn't catch Leclerc, and Leclerc was obviously managing the tyres so well because he caught Sainz so quickly, and the same with Norris, but then he was only eating about 0.4 of a lap into Leclerc's lead when he needed to be doing like more than a second, and it got to the final 2 laps and he was still 8 seconds behind, and I was like, okay, he's not getting 4 seconds a lap. This is not like Mercedes in 2014 or 2020 or anything like that. That really, but yeah, and we kept hearing this new term, papaya mode is what they call it, which I think basically means you're allowed to fight each other without team orders. In this race, if they were really considering it, maybe they should have done team orders to give second to Lando, but that would have left a sour taste in the mouth. And Rosberg was pushing some very inconvenient questions at Zach Brown about things like that. So it means that Lando only he only gained 8 points on Max. And it's just these little things which I think are really going to cost them come the end of this season.
A question. Higher rules. I mean, I don't know what kind of rules those are, but those need to be torn up and re-examined because they didn't really work today. I think the problem I have with McLaren is on several fronts. So let's get into this, yeah? First of all, this is the fastest car in Formula One. Okay? It's been the fastest car since Miami. Every single race since Miami should have been a McLaren victory. I truly believe that. I've been saying this since Miami. We've all been saying it. It's documented. Go back to the Miami race review that we did. You can see that I mentioned that McLaren is the quickest car, and they should be winning all the races going forward. They've only won 3 races in that time period. That is unacceptable. That is ridiculous. And now comes when this is now the point where the entire operation needs to be examined. And let's start with the drivers. Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. As you said, Lando lost the place at the start. Then what did he do? He lost another place after his teammate put a, frankly, very skilled but over-aggressive move into Variante de la Roja chicane. And then he was third. So you've gone from first to third in the fastest car in F1. Then your team tried to put you on a one-stop to match Charles, and he locked up his front left. And that forced McLaren to pit him again. So it's not just that Charles, had a better strategy. Charles didn't make mistakes. Lando did. Lando made an unforced error which ruined his tire. So people need to remember this. Then trying to come into the pit lane, he hit the bollard on the right as well. I mean, so right off the bat, like the driver just isn't getting the job done. Too many mistakes, indecisive, pathetic. And then it doesn't stop there. Randy Singh, head of strategy at McLaren, has continually made conservative strategy calls. Either pitting too early, not pitting quick enough. I mean, you name it. And it just seems that this guy doesn't make the right calls for his own team, for his drivers, and they end up taking strategies which just don't work. It doesn't help when Lando is making mistakes as well. And then finally, my biggest problem is that when you see Zach Brown's interviews, it feels like a ship without any direction. It's just sailing into the sea, and it's almost rudderless because he says, "Yeah, we have Papaya rules," and he doesn't really explain like what that means, and if Oscar broke protocol, if they're going to favor a number one driver going forward. That is, why haven't they been doing that in this race already? I don't want to put the blame only on management. Lando needs to take a lot of the blame too. It strikes me like Zach is a weak leader. Because if you're really serious about this championship with the car you have, you would have told both drivers you hold position at the start. Instead, Piastri probably put the best move of the season on his teammate and made him lose another place. And then Piastri has the gall to come out afterward and say, "This hurts." Well, yeah, it should hurt. I mean, you failed to win in the fastest car after you sabotaged your teammate on lap 1. So, bit strange, bit incompetent. This is one of the worst ever attempts at a title challenge in what is the fastest car. People talk about Damon Hill and make fun of him for his 1994 season and his 1995 season. Let me tell you something. Damon Hill in 1995 was probably performing better than Lando Norris in 2024. And Damon got fired for that season effectively. He was told he wouldn't be able to stay past 96. What's Lando getting? He's getting coddling. Not a correct environment, not a good management style. This is totally unacceptable. And it frustrates me because I know Ron Dennis wouldn't stand for this. This is the fastest car in F1, and these two have wasted it this season. It's shameful.
And in past seasons where we found similar scenarios to this, drivers and teams at least had the excuse that cars break down. I mean, case in point, Kimi 2005. It's that you can at least throw that at them rather than it's just constant systemic and operational and driver errors. Interestingly enough, so at the moment, Lando has just under 80% of the points of Max at this stage in the season. This century, only one driver has overcome that with a smaller percentage. And who might that be, Ciaron?
Probably a driver that has completely shifted the paradigm of what's possible in F1 all throughout his career. Happens to be Finnish. Happens to be Kimi Räikkönen, the real Kimi. So the difference is that Lando is not Kimi Räikkönen. And I don't want to start, as the kids say, blazing Kimi now. But there's a difference. There's a difference in mentality. There's a difference in speed. So Lando has a car to win this title. This is the scary thing. He could still win this championship. Because the advantage he has is more than the advantage that either the McLaren or the Ferrari had over the season in 2007. And what's scary is that he's made so many mistakes. They've thrown away so many wins, and they're still in contention to win this title because their car is the fastest and the Red Bull's going backwards. So this is a bit of a strange dynamic we have in this championship. Do I think he will win it? It's actually not as clear an answer as I was hoping. It could be that he wins it. Max certainly says that he doesn't think Red Bull will win both titles, but I don't see this incompetent outfit that is the modern version of McLaren and these two drivers in that rocket ship being able to win anything. They'll win a few races here and there, but do I think they can suddenly get it together and win a title? No, I don't. And I hope they don't, because they don't deserve it. Honestly, they don't deserve it. They've thrown away so many wins this year. It just wouldn't look good for Formula One if they did. But anyways, that's my take on it. By the way, was it Kimi? I just assumed that.
It was. He was on 75.
Okay.
He was on 75%. Admittedly, different point system, so he was about 2 wins behind, rather than like more than 3, which is what what thing is now. But still, yeah.
There was a great quote at Indianapolis in the final laps in 2007. Hamilton and Alonso were raging off into the distance, and Kimi was behind Massa. He was catching Massa, and James Allen said, "Oh, look, it's Kimi Räikkönen." Martin Brundle said, "Oh, look, it's Kimi Räikkönen, the man who everyone thought was going to win the title this year." Because Kimi was the favorite. And James Allen said, "Well, glad I didn't put any money on that." How wrong were they? But the problem is, I would actually be more inclined to put money on Lando this year than Kimi mid-season in 2007, because the McLaren was probably a slightly better car. In this case, Lando has a rocket ship. Honestly, it's the quickest car in Formula One by a considerable margin. It's hard to bet against that, no matter how incompetent you think the drivers are. So who knows? But I just don't see it happening with the way this outfit is run right now.
I rewatched Indianapolis 07 a few days ago because I was thinking maybe I need to relook at this without hyper focusing on Spiker and Super Aguri and all of that. To look at the squabbling with Hamilton and Alonso. And yeah, there's that bit in the middle where Alonso tries it on with Hamilton, it doesn't work. But yeah, there was another thing for data in the commentary. There was someone at the beginning of the season, they put 10 grand on Lewis to win the championship, and at the time the odds were 30-1. And yeah, so that obviously did not work out for them, and they would have made easy money. That would have been. But anyway, yeah.
Amazing.
Obviously, the circumstances are different this time because it's almost the inverse, because the only way that it would match up is if Lando is basically driving the socks off a car that is not the fastest and is also making up for Red Bull consistently, Checo and Max taking points off each other, which obviously is not happening, and fracturing the team Renal and internal sabotage and everything else. None of that's going on. So the circumstances it really is closer to 95. But it's funny because Max, it feels like Max is underperforming, but it's more. It's still at the same time you can tell he's basically getting the maximum out of the car, and it's making me feel like almost nobody deserves the title this year because everyone is falling short in one way or another. And again, we're in this position, and I said this in the last one. If this 20 years ago, Baku would be the season finale and Max would already be champion, but because this is going on for another 3 months, it means that he does have to think, okay, I do actually need to try and sustain this lead. And it puts a very interesting spin on title fights, actually, because you can go deep into a championship, fall behind, but there's still a lot of time to actually gain back. And so that's what's making things quite interesting going forwards with them. But yeah, it's just that you can see that this iteration of McLaren is not used to fighting at the front and kind of orchestrating title fights, because they would be doing team orders. They'd be saying, no, we need to try and focus on Lando, because even though, I mean, Oscar's about 40 points behind, it's too much of a gap to try and shift the focus to him, even if he starts being faster all the time. And yeah, it's just that because it's entirely new management. This is not the McLaren of Ron Dennis and Teddy Meyer, where they were used to fighting for championships, and it was a really well-oiled machine. They're still coming across as quite naive, and I've described them before as just their general persona, because it helps that because of who their two drivers are, their fan base's average age seems to be about 16 as well. It just feels like a very infantile team in many ways.
Fully agreed. And the problem with all this is that, on days where Oscar's beating Lando, Lando himself would probably be ahead of Oscar, because days like today, because Lando is ahead of Oscar in the championship. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, Oscar is 44 points behind Lando. Don't really understand why he's being allowed to finish ahead of Lando at this point in the season. It's odd. And it just seems like nobody in that team is steering the ship. It's like, oh yeah, I don't want to hurt the kids' feelings. I saw Will Buxton speaking about this, saying maybe there's a clause in Piastri's contract that doesn't allow him to be given team orders in certain circumstances. I don't know. Speculation. But it just feels odd, because, to be honest with you, Peter, I think Piastri has a lot of potential. It's only his second season. But he's not all that. Let's tone down the hype. This is not Senna. This is not a 1985 Alain Prost. This is not Niki Lauda. Definitely not Alberto Ascari. This is Oscar Piastri. He's getting beaten by Lando on pure pace, like most of the races. And Oscar himself has made some horrible mistakes this year. So, I've seen some of these comments online like, oh, if Norris only had Piastri's winning mentality. What winning mentality? What winning mentality? He's behind Norris in the championship. What are you talking about? People need to calm down and see what is going on here. Yes, today Piastri was better than Norris. Piastri didn't win the race, did he? So, I mean, it's just getting to a point where it's like, both of them are underperforming, but the least you can do is give them direction and say, hey, Oscar, I know you want to recreate the Fernando Alonso on Mark Webber pass of Monza 2013, but now is not the place and time to do that. Do you understand? If you pass your teammate, I will rip your contract up and you'll be driving in Formula 7, as far as I'm concerned. Somebody needs to be telling these drivers this at this point, because if they want to win this, they need to be. By the way, there is no Formula 7. That was a hyperbole. But the point is that Lando needs a little bit of support on that front, and I think that doesn't exist right now. But frankly speaking, I don't want McLaren to win this title because I don't think they deserve it. But anyways, that's what they need to be doing. I'd back Lando now going forwards if I were a McLaren executive making decisions, because otherwise this is hopeless. I mean, they didn't take nearly enough points off Max when Max was struggling all weekend. So ridiculous.
I feel like if Norris does take the title, it's only really because we've got basically 2 seasons blended into one, and Max wins the first one and Norris won the second one when they had the faster car. During the race yesterday, I made a comment saying that McLaren, it's sort of becoming a kind of Hakkinen and Coulthard dynamic. And with Piastri, yeah, supremely talented, amazing junior career record. He feels like an early Hakkinen to me, in that the pieces are all there, but they're just not coming together. And again, they have similar personalities of just being kind of stone cold and robotic and everything else. But it's now a lot of things he can be excused for because he's less experienced. This is his second season, whereas it's Lando's sixth, and he's having races like this where he's getting walked all over by his younger, far less experienced teammate. So I don't feel compelled to begrudge Oscar for anything. It's more easy to begrudge Lando for underperforming and being beaten by such a less experienced driver.
Agreed. No, that's a good point. And I think I've seen some takes where people are like, "Oh, this is McLaren's fault. This is everyone's fault in that team." You can't deny the fact that the only reason Lando was in this position was because he had a bad start. How about not having a bad start for once and taking ownership of your own actions? And Piastri has not been perfect this season, but it's not young, and he certainly looks better than Norris did in Norris's second season. So the kid's got potential. I'm just saying that I'm just directly rebutting anybody that thinks Piastri's ready to win a title right now. Like, I think McLaren would be insane if somebody behind the scenes said, "No, we're going to put our chips on Piastri over Norris right now." And that would be the height of stupidity. So, I mean, yes, Oscar's got a lot of potential. He's getting better. Shouldn't really be. I don't really think he should be criticized for passing Norris. I think the real issue is, why is Norris consistently making the same mistakes? That's what it comes down to. You don't want your teammate to pass you, stay in front of them. But then at the same time, let's have McLaren's management also reinforce that to the drivers, because this is no longer just, McLaren fighting for third in the constructors. This is a world championship. So unfortunately for Oscar, even if he does have more speed than Lando right now, it's not a given that he'll be allowed or should be allowed to beat Lando. This is F1. This is how it works. I mean, this is the case with, any title fight, whether it was Alonso and Massa always helping Alonso, even when Massa was very rarely, but sometimes quicker. We saw in Brazil 2007 that Kimi was given, although that was debatable because Kimi always had a longer strategy, but Kimi was given a strategy which was arguably better than Massa's strategy, so he passed Massa in the pit stops. This has got to happen now for McLaren. Like, they need to start giving Lando what he needs to at least try and claw back these points. And from management to strategy team, Randy Singh, to Zach Brown, to Lando, to Oscar, this team is not good enough. It's everyone, and it's a disgrace. I mean, it's such a shame because Rob Marshall and the team have built a truly amazing car. It deserves better than this. It's everything other than the car in that team that's kind of a mess. And that's where I'll stop I'll stop there and let you anything else to that before we move on to the other teams.
I think, it's just clear that Lando basically, at the moment, he's just not mentally strong enough to sustain a championship fight and win the title, because he's very kind of self-deprecating. He's at least very open and honest that, I'm underperforming and things are not working. But he also said he still gets extremely nervous before races and eats almost nothing on race day and everything. Whereas Max never gets nervous. Max he's used to this now. He just cracks on and gets on with it, even if the car is not doing everything he wants it to. But yeah. So let's look at the third place team, which is Mercedes. So they had an interesting start to the weekend because Kimi Antonelli made his Grand Prix weekend debut, took over from George in FP1, proceeded to crash his car 10 minutes in at Parabolica. Some people were getting excited because apparently before that, on the couple of laps he'd done already, he was like 7/10 up on the entire grid in the first sector. And people were looking at the pace and everything, and thinking, oh, it's supreme talent. I was thinking, it sounds less like that and more like a low fuel run and a sort of party mode thing that, like, oh, let's make this guy look good. Plus him thinking, I want to impress them, so let's push hard at the start. And crashes out, which, I mean, it didn't look ideal. Obviously, everyone saw the look on George's face when he saw that his car had been binned a few hours before he was supposed to get in it. And then the next day, the announcement comes through that he is going to be Lewis Hamilton's replacement there next year alongside George. So that's, I mean, it's been one of the worst kept secrets for a long time, but we'll be seeing him there. It's quite a leap to think that this time a year ago he was driving in Frecker, and he's doing not bad in Formula 2, but still, it's just, I don't know what to make of it, to be honest.
Right. Sorry, what did you call it? What's his name? What's this kid's name?
Andrea Kimi Antonelli.
Right. Yeah. They need to stop saying that. This is not Kimi. Okay, and I'm sick of this. His name is Andrea Antonelli. Seeing all these comments online where it's like, guys, I respect I respect Kimi Antonelli as much as I do Kimi Räikkönen. So call him Kimi. I'm thinking, how can you respect that kid as much as Kimi Räikkönen? And here's my other point, Peter. All right, I'm just gonna have it all today. I'm just gonna let loose today because I'm getting real frustrated here. Because what the hell has this kid even done? And maybe in 10 years I'll look like an idiot and he's a 10-time world champion. Which, by the way, I'll fully concede that I was wrong. But let's look at the prodigious young talents in Formula One in recent history. So let's look at them. Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, Kimi Räikkönen. I think that's generally the five we would say that were superstars in their youth coming into F1, right? Does Kimi Antonelli have anything like the record that these guys have? Because it just doesn't feel like he's this prodigious, once-in-a-lifetime driver. It's almost like they're trying to hype him up as that. But I'm not denying that he's talented. He's obviously talented. Goodness sakes, he's so young. But what am I missing here, Peter? Like, how's he doing in F2? Like, is this someone that is really comparable to the names that I just mentioned in terms of what he's shown thus far? Has he won 73% of all the races he entered in Formula Renault? Has he destroyed the opposition as Leclerc and Verstappen and Hamilton did in the juniors? Was he, quicker than both Minardi drivers like Fernando Alonso is when he tested in 1999 when he was like, 17 or 18? Like Peter, what am I missing here before we get on to Mercedes' race? Like, I just don't see the hype here. Okay,
so if I just summarize his career quickly, he just turned 18, so born 2006. He has a very good karting record. There's quite a lot of karting titles, including twice winning the European Karting Championship in 2020 and then 21 before he graduated to single seaters. So his first full season, he did a little bit of Italian F4 in 21. In 22, he then won Italian and German Formula 4. And the FIA Motorsport Games Formula 4 Cup for Team Italy. Last year, he won Formula Regional Middle East and he won Frecker. And the one with Frecker that got everyone's attention was the final race at Zandvoort because it was raining and he was like 3 seconds a lap faster than the rest of the field. I think he got to the lead from 8th in the first lap or something in the rain, and so everyone's decided he's Senna. And then, he got moved up to Formula 2, so skipped Formula 3 entirely. Formula 2, he's been, I suppose, humbled a bit. He's got 2 wins so far, 1 feature race and 1 sprint, but he has had a lot of races where he hasn't been in the points. Also, those 2 wins are his only podiums. A lot of this is that Prema in general have been having problems this year because his teammate is Ollie Behrman. And so like him, both of them have seats in Formula 1 for next year, but Behrman has been kind of abominable in Formula 2, like extremely inconsistent, and he's like 15th or 16th in the championship at the moment. Him and the other person that you would probably try and compare him to is Joshua Dirksen, because he also came up directly from Frecker. He this weekend was a very good one for him. He has 2 podiums. He hasn't got wins. He's had a bit of bad luck, but he's driving for AIX, which is the slowest team as well. And so that's someone you could think, okay, well, and he's somebody who was completely average and anonymous in Frecker, and he's doing reasonably well in Formula 2. And so you think maybe the jump up is not as as difficult as you would think it is, because FRECA cars are not that different from Formula 3 cars at the end of the day as well. It seems like, so there's obviously a lot of potential. My concern is that he's being pushed too quickly. It feels like a more extreme version of somebody like Esteban Tuero, maybe. It's just that everyone's been talking about him for the past 2-3 years and obsessing over Antonelli, and he's getting a huge amount of media coverage and attention. And it's like, it's just happening a bit too fast, because now he's debuting in Formula One, and it's going to be with one of the front running teams as well. And he'll be 18 years old, and it's just there's going to be a lot of teething things. It was just funny as well that the kind of response he got for crashing, because Toto was like, oh well, he kind of needs to crash because it shows how determined he is, or this is how you learn, is by crashing and everything. And it's like, I've never seen anyone else get so much sympathy for crashing, and everyone was amazed by his lap times before this. And it's like, yeah, but it was 10 minutes in and he crashed. At the end of the day, like, it's just he's become the chosen one, and so I think people are holding him to a very different standard as other drivers in his position.
Shout out to Esteban Tuero. You're out there, Esteban. Would love to have you come on this podcast. Want to know why you retired at 20 years old. You got a brilliant future in front of you. We won't forget you, my friend. But I'll tell you what after everything you just said, Peter, which you summarized very nicely, I don't think this kid is ready for Formula One. I'm telling you, like, I would not be saying this unless I genuinely felt this. My sentiments are like yours in that I feel like he's being rushed. And I wonder why he's being rushed, because this kid clearly needs another year in F2. And this is when dangerous things start to happen. You know, there was nothing impressive about his free practice. Nothing. He had the updates that Mercedes were hoping to garner and extract data from. Lewis had the old spec car in that free practice. So Kimi Antonelli, as they call him, Andrea Antonelli was tasked with basically carrying out not just, fast lap times, but consistent lap times. Get the thing home and don't crash it, so Mercedes could analyze if the new spec updates on that car were working, and he couldn't do it. It showed immaturity. It showed that he just wanted to go quick. He wasn't thinking about the fact that I have the updates. I need to bring this thing home so that the team can actually understand what's going on this weekend. And his results in F2 this year aren't going to magically get better in F1. This guy's coming to F1 too early. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it. I do not think he's going to have a good season next year. And I'm going to look like a complete idiot if he wins the World Championship. But I'll take that risk. And I'll happily admit that I'm wrong if I am wrong. But this just does not feel like the 5 prodigious talents that I mentioned earlier on this podcast. And it worries me. It worries me. What also worries me is that Mercedes this weekend were just not that quick, apart from, or not in the race anyways, apart from qualifying. I mean, it was odd. I mean, I think Hamilton had pace for the front row, and Russell had, qualified third. So they were fast in quali, but then, in the race, it was a disaster. Before we get into that, anything else you wanted to add, Peter?
I mean, yeah, well, on Antonelli, I think next year he's basically just going to get walked over by George, but then the rookie against an experienced driver, that would happen anyway, but I think it's the margins are going to be quite big. And then you have to factor in that Mercedes seems to have a bit of they're going through their own set of operational errors and general incompetence that comes and goes at different points, and so that's not going to help him. But I feel like he's being a bit too protected and needs a bit of a reality check in some sense. But yeah, Mercedes themselves, in practice, once both their normal drivers were in the cars and they were fixing everything, people were getting excited because their pace looks pretty good. Even though going into the weekend, a lot of assumptions were that because the track had been resurfaced, that probably wasn't going to help them in terms of tyre temperatures and degradation and everything else. And then qualifying ended up just being that they found themselves third fastest, third and fifth. Lewis especially he made some very interesting comments afterwards. when he said something along the lines of the team needs better than this, and maybe they'll get that in Antonelli. Which is it? You wouldn't necessarily think that someone like him would think, as a 7-time champion, that I'm expecting this kid to come in and be better than I am, unless he really is that far gone at this point at 39 and everything. When he won 2 races not that long ago, before the summer break. So yeah, and then in the race, Lewis had a very anonymous race, not much to say on his part. Started 5th, finished 5th, just did his thing. George, went through the escape road at the start, damaged his wing, had to replace it. That took about 10-15 seconds off of his overall race time, and that was enough to leave him down in 7th, wasn't it? So yeah, he's done this before, just a bit of a bummer, when otherwise he could have maybe been on the podium. Probably 4th ahead of Sainz at the end. So just a little bit. Yeah, the pace just wasn't quite there, but they didn't quite maximize what they could have done this weekend.
Their tire management was pathetic. I mean, they really couldn't do a one-stop even if they wanted to. And I think, they tried a 2-stop because I think with Lewis, they thought it's unlikely that they were going to be able to pass Sainz on the track. And they just couldn't catch Sainz in the end at all. With George, as you mentioned, his first lap just ruined his race, basically. And I think if George hadn't had that unforced error, maybe he could have gained the place on Verstappen if he had tried to do a 1-stop. But because he had that opening lap damage, he couldn't even do that. So really a pathetic race by Russell that was totally unnecessary. And unfortunately, there's a bit of a trend emerging at Mercedes that Russell seems to be the quicker driver over 1 lap. But Lewis always seems to claw something back in the races. And that's to Lewis's credit. I don't think Lewis has lost anything. I think he's an emotional driver. And he says things when he's emotional. I don't take him, unfortunately, at face value. I don't believe that he thinks that Kimi's better than him. I just think he's frustrated and lashing out publicly. That's Lewis Hamilton's, unfortunately, the way he behaves. I remember Jenson Button had the superior updates at Spa one year. I think it was 2012. And Jenson was flying all weekend, and, Lewis was frustrated and tweeted out Jenson's telemetry, So it's that kind of behavior that I've become accustomed to seeing from Lewis. He's petulant, but he's still a brilliant racing car driver, and he's showing it in the races this season. Russell's showing he's a brilliant qualifier, but he needs to clean up his act on race day. I still think George is probably a better driver than Lando, but George still has room for improvement as an overall driver. He sometimes just makes too many unforced errors, and you got to ask yourself why that is. Because some of his mistakes are just totally avoidable, and they're quite impactful in the end. So he needs to clean that up, just in general. You can't win a title driving like that, mate. But, work to do there. And I'm sure Lewis will have mixed feelings seeing Charles win the race. But in a way, I'm sure he probably looked at that and thought, I could do that. Charles did it. I could do that. So, anyways, Mercedes have a lot of work to do. And, we'll see. They were better than Zandvoort, but it's still not where they need to be.
Yeah, I think for George, he's in the same position as Lando in that this is his sixth season in Formula One. Different career trajectories, of course, because he started with a backmarker team, was with them for 3 years, and now he finally got his big break at Mercedes, but the car has sucked for 3 years. But he's been in this position of really taking it to Lewis and consistently beating him for the most part, especially in qualifying as Mr. Saturday and all of that. And so I think for Lewis, it has been difficult because, he was on top of the world, then he loses 21, and now the cars have been really bad. And as well as the cars not being very good, he's got a teammate who is far less agreeable and submissive than Bottas, actually challenges him a lot and beats him a lot as well. And so I think that's obviously just not, for him, it's not an ideal situation, really. But now, yeah, Russell still is making these is too many mistakes in races. Lewis is his qualifying performance has quite clearly degraded. He's not the qualifier he used to be. He's got what, one pole position in the past 3 years or something now, isn't it? Hungary last year. I don't think he has any others. Unless he had, did he have Spa or was that was Lando?
I think that was Lando. I mean, um, as far as I remember, his last pole was Hungary 2023, and the one before that was that crazy race in Saudi Arabia in 2021.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, what
that
he's
was yeah.
one pole position in the past 3 years, and George has got two or three something, and then George has, well, both of them have two wins now, or three
Yeah.
wins. No, George has 2 wins. Yeah, Sao Paulo 21, and then Austria this year. Of course, he had Spa, so they both have 2 wins as well. Yeah, so it's just
Yeah.
that it's like a Rosberg light in that now the car's not fighting for championships, but again, Rosberg was often better in qualifying, but then kind of fell apart in the races and all of that.
Yeah.
And basically just kind of handed a lot of wins to Lewis by messing up on his own.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we'll see. I mean, I don't know. When you see performances like what Charles did yesterday, and you think, can Lewis really match that? Assuming that Ferrari are in this position next year, which I don't think they will be. But when races like that come up, it's like he's going to have a real challenge on his hands against Leclerc. If you think what the challenges has been against Russell.
Yeah, I really think it's going to be brutal because people oftentimes mistake me for being anti a driver or anti, you know, their favorite driver if I criticize them, but it's just my opinion because yes, I think Lewis Hamilton overall he's a greater driver than Charles Leclerc in the history of F1 and maybe even more complete right now. I don't know, but it's close, that's for sure. Lewis is a better racer than Charles right now, but when he goes to a new team next year that Leclerc has known since 2019, so that'll be what, like Leclerc's seventh season with Ferrari.
Yeah,
Leclerc speaks Italian. He doesn't have to adapt to anything. Hamilton's going to a new team with a new race engineer and a team that doesn't speak English as its first language against a driver who has been at this team for 7 years and is nicknamed Il Predestinato. This is going to be ugly. And if Lewis somehow manages to beat Charles, I will be amazed. Because I think Lewis is going to get the biggest beat down of his career next year. I really do.
mm.
And it's a shame because, his fans are like pumping it up and saying, oh, Lewis can overcome all of this. And I would say, no, he can't. Nobody can. This is how F1 works, like you need the variables to be in your favor. And I think Lewis, I think Mercedes made a mistake in making it hard for him to apparently resign there. I think Lewis made a mistake by going to Ferrari. And I think in general, mistake in firing Carlos Sainz. There's just no need to do this. And in a way, it ruins Hamilton's legacy. And I'll tell you why. Yes, everyone wants to see him win the eighth title, and winning it with Ferrari would be special. But here's a kid who, at a young age, had Mercedes backing him, paying for everything, working with Ron to make sure he would become the ultimate driver when he debuted, the most prepared rookie of all time. And what a rookie season that was. Then all of a sudden, for like the last few years of his career, he just goes to Ferrari. He could have been like a lifer at Mercedes, a guy who never left it. And I think that would have helped his legacy. It would have showed loyalty in some kind of way. And it just feels all wrong, at 40 years old to ditch Mercedes and just go to Ferrari against a kid who is so ingrained in the culture, in the politics, in the way that team operates, and who speaks Italian like it's his mother tongue, Charles Leclerc. I do not see this ending well. And I think it's unfair because I don't think Lewis should have done that. And I think his fans need to prepare themselves because I think they're gonna be in for the shock of their lives next season.
Mm.
But anyways,
When the first murmurings of retirement were coming on, there were talks of him wanting to try and get some kind of ambassadorial role with Mercedes. Um, I'm guessing that's not going to happen now because when this happens, he'll have parted ways with them after 26 years together, going all the way back to when he was 13.
It's ridiculous. Why would he do this?
I mean, normally a trajectory like this at his age happens when maybe your performances are going off, and so you go to some midfield team just to live out your retirement. So for Lewis, you could have said, oh well, let's just demote him to Aston Martin. He can be with Alonso. That'll be fun. They can bookend their careers together. But no, he did this by choice, and I get that he saw Kimi on the horizon, but it's like, why are you so scared of this kid? Like, you could have just stamped it down and stayed there with George, even though you know that George will eventually take over the mantle from him. But there was no reason to leave. It was just a very random choice. Other than everyone, even though Ferrari are a shit show, except this weekend, everyone wants to drive for Ferrari. Like, they just do, and I think that's part of it. Also wanting to cash out because they're paying him 100 million a year, even though he's already got mountains of money to live off. It's a funny one, but it will be a very interesting situation next year. So then we have Red Bull. Really, well, their worst race this year, without question. What shocks me most is that it seems like the great leveler between Max and Checo is having a shit car, because there was not that much in it between them this weekend, actually. In both qualifying, I mean, Max messed up his qualifying run, although his Q2 lap time still would have kept him P6 or P7, whatever it was. But in the race, he had the slow pit stop. Outside of that, wasn't miles ahead of Checo like we've seen. Checo was still the slowest of the fast guys. But Checo has turned things around a bit somehow. But the car is just not working anymore. And yeah, it's time for them to start getting concerned, I think.
So Perez claims that Max is now suffering in the way he's been suffering all season. I'm not sure if I'm willing to call it that, but it seems like the fundamental handling imbalance of this car is now really hurting Max. And we know it's already hurting Perez, and Perez is not really moving, but in terms of his position in the standings or in the races, a serious issue with this car. They went from having the most dominant car in the modern era last year, starting off very well in the beginning, and now they don't have tire deck. They don't have a front end. This thing is understeering like a bus. And Max is getting frustrated because of this. And they've got to ask themselves, why is this happening? Clearly, they've put updates and they've gone in a direction that has been detrimental to both drivers. That is not promising. When have we ever seen Red Bull being so incompetent in recent years? And I think the balance problem is the main issue. I mean, none of those drivers had any confidence in their cars. And it prompted Max after the race to say, I don't think either the driver or the World Constructors' Championship is possible this year. That's a shocking statement. And, you know, even when you look at their strategy, the two-stop wasn't really the optimal strategy. So it was just basically damage limitation for him. The only silver lining is that McLaren didn't get a 1-2, so the loss in points wasn't as much as it should have been. But they have to really implement a ton of updates to this car because they cannot rely on McLaren messing up if they want to win this title. They need to start getting results and quickly. Something's gone wrong at Red Bull.
Yeah, so in the Constructors, they're now 8 points ahead of McLaren. So Constructors is finished. McLaren have got that. They're also that'll be McLaren's first Constructors title since 98 as well. Yeah, 26 years. And then they're only 39 points ahead of Ferrari, so there's every reason to believe they could drop to third in the Constructors, and all you can say is it's entirely Checo's fault. But with the car, what I don't understand is that I get that if you don't upgrade a car, it falls behind on pace, but in terms of struggling to drive it, why can't you just go back to the spec they had at the beginning of the season when Max was dominating? Even if it's slower, he can drive it, it'll do what he wants to do. It's like, why would you... why would you keep running a spec of car where it obviously has fundamental handling problems that don't work for him? It's just, that's what I don't understand. And it seems to be this dilemma that people put upgrades on which turn on being downgrades, because we've basically reached the peak of technical development with these current extremely restrictive regs. And it's going to be a similar thing like next year, just the tiniest incremental differences, and then things are going to make it worse because there's hardly any leeway to make any meaningful difference. And it's like, why can't you? Because that was the thing in Spa. They went back to the Bahrain spec car, and yet he still couldn't drive it properly. And I was like, but in Bahrain he won really comfortably, and everyone saw that race and was like, oh god, it's going to be 2023 all over again. So, and the tires haven't changed. Like, it's not like 2013 when they bring in a new compound of tires mid-season. So I don't understand how I get how it can get slower relative to everyone else, but not start driving worse. That's what I don't understand. And they had, well, this is one of the worst weekends they've had in a very, very long time. I mean, for Max in particular, well, for Checo, qualifying 8th by his standards is excellent. But for Max, outside of Singapore last year, which was a bit of an anomaly for them, and then Jeddah, where he had the gearbox failure, was knocked out in Q2. I don't think he's qualified this badly. Probably not since 2020, 2019, something like that. I'm trying to think if there were any examples in 2021 of him qualifying notably badly, because he was basically always at the front that year. So it's this is now. Like being, they haven't been 4th fastest in a very long time, as well, because they've been fastest for the past 3-4 years. 2020 second fastest, 19 mostly 3rd fastest that year, 18 and 17 3rd fastest, 16 3rd fastest again, 15 not since 2015, because 2015 they were slower than Williams were better than them, Ferrari were better, Mercedes. Maybe someone else, maybe Force India. They're kind of 4th, 5th fastest. This is the worst. This is turning into like the worst car they've had since 2015.
Yeah, and I agree with every word. I mean, recently the FIA banned braking systems on the front or rear axles that generate asymmetric braking torque. There was some speculation that may have hurt Red Bull. Some people came out and said that's nonsense. That won't affect it. I mean, how much do we want to say Adrian Newey not being involved as much is a problem too? I don't know, but you have to look at that and think, we haven't seen the technical team look this clueless at Red Bull since before Newey joined, frankly. So,
I mean, to be honest, like that system, the asymmetric braking, that sounds basically like a more sophisticated version of McLaren's brake steering that they had in 97 and 98. But then, to be honest, they've got rid of that, and now Max is always complaining about understeer at the front end, and I'm like, I can see the connection. Take away brake steering, which is meant to make the car basically turn like a tank, and now it's understeering. So maybe it is. That could be it. I mean, Newey has taken a step back. He's still the main force behind the design of their cars, even though. What's his face? The other person is technically the technical director. But now... oh, God, I can never remember his name. Paul, French guy. Something.
No. Pierre Wash?
Yeah, Pierre Wash or Washe, whatever it is.
Pierre Wash or Pierre Wash.
He's technically the technical director. Even though I think Newey has the title of chief technical overseer, or I don't know, camp commandant, something like that. I don't know. So he's not. It's more that he probably turns up once a week and he's like, oh, no, make that longer, curve that round a bit more, just stuff that, and then buggers off back to his drawing board. But here we got. I know that this week apparently they're reporting he has signed for a team and it will be announced shortly. And I guess the general assumption is that it's Aston Martin, unless Flavio has thrown an avalanche of money at him to join Alpine, with them trying to take on Mercedes engines and all of that. But now, Max Sadies can't be a thing because Antonelli's got the seat, so Max is stuck with Red Bull now, and it's looking like it's just the downfall has begun, and it's just a case of seeing if he can hold on. And to be fair, if the car in this situation, if he can hold on and still take the title, then kudos to him, because he's still getting the maximum out. Either way, he is still getting the maximum out of it. and he's being helped by the other teams falling short.
Yeah, I think I agree with all that. The problem is that if Max wants to go to Mercedes, I can guarantee you that Toto Wolff will make it happen. We've seen contracts aren't even worth the paper they're written on in Formula One, as we all know. So we'll see. Maybe Max will get frustrated after this season if they don't win the title and call Toto and say, "Get me in your team." And I don't think Toto would do it for next year, but then for the year after, I think certainly Russell wouldn't be safe if he doesn't perform against Antonelli. So we'll see. We'll watch that space.
Mm.
I don't really have anything else to add to that. I think ultimately they need to improve their car or they are going to struggle to win this championship. It's as simple as that. They're way behind McLaren.
They need to find a solution. I think that the main thing is today the loss wasn't as bad as it could have been, but they've got some very rough races coming up because Baku has characteristics very similar to Monza, so that could be quite a bad race for them. And then we all remember what happened in Singapore last year, and that's a circuit where you really don't need understeer and low speed corners, so that could be a train wreck of a race in Singapore. And by that point, then we've got a month to go before we pick up, because for some reason there's a 4-week break before we go to Kota, and then there's another 3-week break, I think, between Qatar and Vegas or something, or Sao Paulo and Vegas. So we've got this season is ending like 3 weeks later than it should, and it's just so we have this autumn break. But yeah, we'll see how things look after Singapore, but I don't think they're going to be in a very good position. Next up then would be Williams. So interesting turning point in their trajectory because Logan Sargent is out and they brought in Franco Colapinto. So originally this week, we all knew it was coming after Sargent's crash in Zandvoort, and it was compared to the others such an obvious error to make. That was enough, and they brought upgrades and he destroyed them. Originally, James tried to get Liam Lawson. He wanted him, but then Red Bull were like, no. So it's like, okay, well, I guess I'll go to Colapinto, which is, I think, was the right decision. Again, in the interest of integrity of junior programs, just like Alpine signing Doohan, they should sign Colapinto because he's their oldest and most experienced junior driver. He's been okay in Formula 2, far better than Zach O'Sullivan, the next most experienced. And then his sponsors paid them quite a heavy dollop of cash to get him in that car. And it's like, why not? Sainz is there next year, so he's stuck for. He can have his 10-race stint. He'll probably end up going back to Formula 2 next year, but he can still do that. And it paid off because the car was good this weekend. Albon made Q3. He knuckled down. He was best of the rest. He finished 9th. Colapinto, first quali, so he messes up a little, but first race, 18th. But then he runs 38. He does a 38-lap stint on the hards, which is exactly what Leclerc did. Doesn't get lapped, makes some overtakes, finishes 12th. So yeah, very good weekend for them.
I agree. I was impressed by both Williams drivers, it has to be said. Both pulled off the one stop very nicely, made up good ground. I think Haas had them beat on race pace, but Alex just kept his nose clean, and the Haas drivers were just running into anything that moved. So ultimately, Williams can be very proud of their weekend, I think. In this case, Alex Albon actually did a phenomenal job and maximized his car. No question about it. And keep in mind, Magnussen was in front of Albon, and he mitigated that 10 seconds penalty, basically, that Magnussen had. He made sure that he stayed within that time frame so he could gain that position when Kevin was dropped down a few places after the race. And Colapinto, I think his race was good. I think his qualifying wasn't, but like you said, that's just first race nerves. It can happen to anyone. So all in all, I don't have many things to criticize Williams for. So if they only had more races like that, maybe we would be even more complimentary. But Monza was terrific. They beat out Haas, and frankly speaking, Haas was quicker than Williams, especially in the race this weekend.
Yeah, good race for them. Colapinto. I'm not convinced that Sargent would have done that. He probably would have qualified 19th rather than 18th behind, because the only person he seemed to ever be able to beat is Joe. And then in the race he just would have not gone anywhere. Probably finished like 16th, 17th, something like that. So then you mentioned Haas. funny race for them. So they were both knocked out Q2. Very early on is when Hülkenberg had a collision. It was Ricardo gave him a knock, broke his front wing, so that basically put him out of it because he had to pit very early. Magnussen, they decided, let's use him, let's run long, use him as a battering ram again. He started, I think he started on hards, if I can salt my table. No, he started on softs. He pits on lap 14. He did a one stop, so he did 39 laps on hards. He went all Lindisfarne on Gasly's ass at one point, and then got his penalty for that. Somehow still finished in the points, even with everything that went on. So it's one of these sort of, it's like you don't know what to make of it in terms of power rankings, because, okay, amazing stint, very reckless race, got the points, took the penalty, but then on top of that, because that's 12 penalty points, he's not racing in Baku. We have our first race ban with this new penalty point system. They haven't announced it yet. I'm assuming it's Behrman that is going to take the seat for that race, unless they for some reason give it to Pietro Fittipaldi, who I think is still a reserve for them. And maybe, and you look at that, it's like maybe it's worth just sidelining Magnussen for the rest of the year. Just throw Behrman in. He's not fighting for the F2 title. He doesn't need it as well because he's already got the seat with them. Just throw him in for the second half and that, if you want him to get off to a good start next year. But, yeah, just quite a reckless race. The sort of Haas of old from them.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Hulkenberg was shameful in the race. That was one of the worst races I've seen him do recently. Made contact with Ricardo. Engine went into anti-stall. He lost more places. Then he had an incident with Sonoda. Had to change his front wing after that. Then he had to serve a penalty. Pathetic. Okay, there's a reason why he's never been on the podium, I guess. That was really not what I expected from Nico Hulkenberg. Magnussen made a one-stop work, but again, he just made it. He had a quicker car than the Williams, for example, and the Aston. So, technically speaking, he should have finished ahead of the Williams. So it's only because he made contact with Pierre Gasly that he got that penalty. But he only finished with the penalty given 2/10 ahead of Alonso. So Alonso must be kicking himself, because surely he could have made up that 2/10 from somewhere. So Magnussen got lucky. He was just ahead of Alonso, penalty adjusted. But unfortunately, he shouldn't have even been in that position. Haas was not slow this weekend at all. It was best of the rest. And unfortunately, Magnussen is not best of the rest. He's just the rest. So that's how I would sum it up. Wasted opportunity for a few more points, given how fast their car was.
Yeah, I'm assuming, because I noticed this in the final few laps, that because he had the penalty and I could see the gaps, is that I'm guessing that for Alonso, his race engineers over the radio just like, step on it because we can get this point now. But Aston Martin, yeah, another similar pace to Haas, best of the rest. I mean, they qualified. Well, Alonso was 11th, and he said, I think that's the maximum I can do in this car, which is fair enough. Stroll was out in Q1. He qualified 17th, but then Stroll was a useless qualifier, so that's a given. Alonso, yeah, quiet race. Didn't really see or hear much from him. He just did his thing. Started 11th, finished 11th. Stroll got passed by Colapinto at the start, passed him again quickly, but then he went on a funny. He ended up doing a 3-stop. So he was one of the ones that started on hards. He went until lap 19, then pitted for mediums. Then he put second set of mediums on lap 36. So he went as long as Sainz went on softs on hard. So he did a very short hard stint, and they decided on this. Yeah, I don't know why that was the case. And his 2 medium stints were almost as long as the hard stint. And then he pitted 2 laps before the end for softs, presumably to try and steal fastest lap away from McLaren. Not that it worked, because he didn't get fastest lap, so he finished last. So I don't know what was going on there, but yeah, just not very good from them.
Shocking. I mean, I think Alonso tried some smart tactics, trying to stay in people's slipstream DRS so he could make up as many places as he could. He kind of utilized the DRS in front of him, or the car in front of him to have DRS quite a few times. But their car, we know the Aston Martin is just tough on its tires. It degrades them too quickly. So Alonso couldn't do that one stop that I'm sure he wanted to do. He had to do a 2-stop. And frankly speaking, I think he did an okay job. It's just that car isn't quick enough for points. And, to only come within a second of Albon and 0.2 of Magnussen has got to sting. That's brutal. Yeah, Lance, less said the better. 3-stop strategy, trying to take fastest lap. He says that the team is missing performance. I think they're also missing a driver. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, this driver, no amount of money pumped in by Lawrence is going to make Stroll champion. At least not without Alonso getting there first.
Yeah.
I mean, I find I have the same thing to say after every race with them. It's just that, Stroll sucks, doesn't want to be there. Lawrence is living vicariously through him. And Alonso has to call it quits eventually because I get that he's unmarried and so he doesn't have a life outside F1, but like, he must have to get sick of yet more crappy cars, a lot of which are self-inflicted, I'll be honest, but still, it's just like, he must get sick of this eventually. Because there was a spark of hope and spring in his step in the first half of last year, and then the car went back to where it's been for the past year and a half now of just being a midfielder. So eventually he'll get bored, and then they can hand the seat to, God forbid, Drogovic, if they even remember he exists. I don't know, or Jack Crawford, whatever. Yeah.
Alonso fears life after Formula One. It's pretty obvious to me, but I'll leave it. I'll stop there. But I think he's someone who's afraid. Because all his life he's only been racing, and I don't think he wants to let it go.
Maybe he'll try Indy. Maybe he'll try Indy again, see if he can get the Indy 500. Because I think he was humbled a bit that oval racing is not quite as simple as it looks, and it requires a different type of driving and everything else. And not that I really understand it, but so much of it does seem to be down to chance because it's about whoever's leading. It by default is the slowest person, unless you're able to break the slipstream somehow, which almost never happens. Yeah, so we'll see. Yeah. We'll see what he goes on. But he's just now he's 43 or almost 43. I can't remember when his birthday is. Maybe it just happened. Eventually he'll give it up, but he just seems a bit scared to do so. Next up, RB. Crappy race from them. Tsunoda was out in Q1. A few laps in, retires because the car's overheating. I think wasn't it actually him? Maybe that had collision with Hülkenberg, or one of the RBs. I'm sure him or Ricardo. Yeah. Or maybe it was Ricardo, because Ricardo got his penalty, and then he got penalised again.
It was both.
Both of them.
Contact. So Hülkenberg hit Ricardo at the start. Hülkenberg hit Ricardo at the start, and then he just piled into Tsunoda. I'm going to be honest, that really was not Tsunoda's fault at all.
No. But Tsunoda, he has a very poor record here, because I don't think he didn't start in 21. He finished somewhere badly 22, and then I think he didn't even start last year either. So his record at Monza is appalling. But then Ricardo, he takes the penalty, and then you see the mechanic grabs the front wing, and then immediately he's like, shouldn't have done that, and he knows he messed up, and then he gets his 10-second penalty at the end, which, not that it makes any difference because he was outside the points, it demoted him from 12th to 13th and gave 12 to Colapinto. But yeah, just an anonymous, not good weekend for Tsunoda, largely out of his hands, but Ricardo just driving badly and that.
Thing is that this weekend, even if they were driving well, their car wasn't quick enough. They're gonna have to really take this post-race test. I think there's a Pirelli test on Wednesday, and they have to take this very seriously because they just don't have the speed in the car, and that's a real problem. So.
There seems to be the most inconsistent on pace because one race it's a Q3 car and then the next race it's a Q1 car. The midfield in general is more mixed up than the front runners, but there's moves back and forth the most. It does know that the drivers are very inconsistent as well.
Yeah, and it's really tough for them because they had Yuki's retirement meant that they lost around 40 laps. That would have definitely contributed to them better understanding the new updates that they had introduced. So Hülkenberg really did a number on RB. I don't know what was going through Nico's mind. Maybe he just thought maybe he was triggered by an RB or just was in a bad mood today because he was just vicious, crashing into people, making mistakes, completely destroyed both RB drivers' races. It's like that Spider-Man movie where what's his name, Peter Parker becomes like a bully for a bit of it.
Oh,
It's
in
like bully.
the third one, yeah.
Yeah,
Spider-Man 3,
this
yeah.
is like bully Hulkenberg in this race. Wouldn't want to meet him there or anywhere. It was just vicious stuff. So
Yeah.
not sure what got into Hulkenberg.
Hmm. Who's next then? It is Alpine. Alpine, they started 14th and 15th and finished 15th and 14th. So the drivers stop around. Didn't see much of. I think Ocon was one of the one stoppers. Let me see. Ocon. Oh yeah. Ocon did 31 laps on hards, and then he did a stint on medium. So he was a one stopper. Gasly was a two stop. So he pitted on lap 10. So he actually pitted first of the people that were pitting when they planned to. He went to hards. He did 23 laps on hards and then went to mediums. No, sorry, he did 20. He did 20 laps on hards and then did hards again. So not the best strategy. Obviously, he gets hit by Magnussen, but otherwise, they're just not. This just wasn't a race where they were on the pace.
Precisely. I think that brake issue at the beginning really hurt him. Get to let Ocon through, and then that resulted in him having a pit earlier. Yeah, Alpine split the strategies. Ocon managed to do a one stop. Good for him. You know, Ocon has showed that he can manage the tires pretty well. And then I think basically this team is just nowhere. What's going to have to happen here is an aggressive sequence of updates because this car is off the pace. Ocon's car didn't have any problems today. Gasly's did, but Ocon was miles off the pace. Miles off the pace. And, you know, yes, Ocon did a one-stop strategy, but, you know, they're having recurring issues all weekend, and I think both cars finished within 10 seconds, within 6 seconds. So you've got to say the drivers are doing all they can. I question whether the engineers and the team is doing all they can. So,
Well,
a lot of
speaking
work.
of engineers and the team, they also had a bit of trouble and strife back home because there were protests in the factories in Vigy-sur-Châtillon and in Enstone because of this deal to get Mercedes engines, and they don't want that. Which is funny because Mercedes engines are better, but I get it's like, well, Alpine don't want it because that's the engine factory. Well, that puts up out of a job. But also, this is meant to be a French team, so why are we taking German engines? But this is, this is the Flav. Like he's sort of scheming in the background. He's cooking something. I'm not sure what it is. He's obviously trying to groom Newey, seduce him, bring him into the fold. This Oliver Oakes, their new team principal, I've said this before. He's like he's just the figurehead that's been the plant, and you know, like I forget his name again. The temporary premier of the Soviet Union after Stalin died, when it was Beria and Khrushchev doing their own thing in the background. Yeah. But it wasn't Khrushchev. It was the one in between that. Who did it for like 6 months and everything, and no one took him seriously and all that. It'll come to me.
No, he's a famous individual.
Yeah.
I thought it was was it Malenkov?
Yeah, Georgy Malenkov. Yeah, him. It's like him.
Malenkov?
He's just the puppet that's just put in place. But yeah, it's the Flav is he's trying to do something. I'm not sure what yet, but the Mercedes engines, well, it can't realistically still be Alpine anymore if they're going to take on Mercedes engines. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. We'll see, but yeah, they have. I mean, we probably talked about it in the last episode. They've signed Jack Doohan. He's going over. He'll join Gasly. Fair enough. I mean, people are skeptical that he's kind of average, and to be fair, he's okay. Like he's kind of like in his junior Formulae. But in the integrity of the junior team, yes, they absolutely should give it to him because he's their official test and reserve driver. He's on the simulator constantly. They test him when they can. This is how it goes, and you should give him that chance. And he can do a year with them, and if he sucks, they can just get rid of him and try someone else. But yeah, it does mean that we will end up having, unless if Netflix somehow holds on, we're going to have 3 Australian drivers next year, which I don't think has ever happened before. Maybe in the 1970s there were some races where it did, but otherwise I'm not sure that's ever happened.
Not sure either. Don't know what that says about Australian motorsports. We only have one race there. Maybe they'll bring back Adelaide or something like that. But yeah, Australian drivers generally have been pretty good. I think starting with Alan Jones, there's been quite a few talented ones.
Yeah, in the 70s, well, we had Alan Jones for a bit, but also there were names like Howden Ganley, Vern Chupin, David Walker, people like that. So maybe there was a point where we had like three at once for like one race or something. But otherwise, yeah, it was Alan Jones for a while, and then we didn't have anyone for. I mean, we had David Brabham for a year and a half, and then Mark Webber and Ricciardo, and then Piastri. Yeah. Final team, Sauber. So, well, Joe, at least it wasn't a whole second to Bottas this time. He qualified 3/10 behind, and 4/10 behind Colapinto. He did an identical strategy to Colapinto and was 45 seconds behind him at the end plus a lap because he was 2 laps down, or he got laps, but thing didn't. Quite early on in the race, by the midpoint of the race, he was like 15 seconds behind Hülkenberg, who had to pit early with damage and replace a front wing, and he still wasn't ahead of him. So it's just the pace is not there. He's not trying anymore. Bottas did a one stop. He did 33 laps on hards and then final stint mediums, but only moved up to 16th from 19th. And so yeah, car's not great, but then people say get rid of Joe, put someone else in. It's like, to be honest, it makes no difference who's in that car because points are just not on the cards.
For sure. Very much agreed on these points. It was a bit odd. I mean, they both did a one stop. They did counter tire strategies, but it was both the same number of times in terms of doing a one stop. They both did that, but it felt like they were relying on a bit of luck in that they were hoping to get lucky with a potential safety car in this race. And that's a good strategy sometimes, but I think Joe post race was a bit frustrated. He was saying, look, rather than relying on luck, we need to find actual speed in the car, and not hope that a safety car bails us out. He's got a point. Well, actually, I don't think he has any points this year, does he? But he has a point when he says that. Anyways, that's his first point of the year. Anyways,
yeah.
Point.
Sauber. Yeah, Sauber still have one vacancy next year, but they It's funny. There are so many different names in contention for what is the least desirable seat on the grid at the moment. Another name that has come into contention this weekend and come into the fold is actually Gabriel Bortoleto. So I'll explain for you. He is a McLaren junior, but McLaren, that's locked in. There's no point trying to get a seat with them anytime soon, because then you've even got like Pato O'Ward being contenders and stuff. So yeah, Bortoleto, he won the Formula 3 last year basically by falling upwards because the grid was so useless and he was just vaguely consistent. In the same way that we saw over the weekend, again, another aside, Formula 3 final race, there were 4 drivers in contention for the title. It went to this guy called Leonardo Fornaroli, who in the final race, it was between him and Gabriele Mini, who is an Alpine junior. He was ahead of him. He had a 5-point lead. He was running ahead. He lost the lead. He then ran wide, fell behind him. He then fell behind someone called Christian Mansell. So the final lap, he was 4th and Mini was 2nd, which would have given Mini the title by 1 point. And then the last corner of the last lap, so we got a full Brazil 2008 moment. He passed his Mansell and finishes 3rd and wins the title by 2 points. And then Mini was disqualified a few hours later, which happens constantly in Formula 3. Yeah, that's a little aside. So he won the title, but he won the title without winning one race this year. He has an avalanche. He has 1 second place and avalanche of 3rd place, and that was enough for him to win the title because it's so desperately inconsistent. And it was a similar thing with Bortoleto. I think he won like 1 or 2 races in Formula 3 last year. This year, he's been mostly quite good. This weekend, he spun off in the gravel in qualifying, and so started the sprint. He started both races from last. He got up into the points of the sprint, and then in the feature race, he won it, but only because the safety car was brought out on the same lap that he was due to pit. And so everyone was saying, oh, it's a last to first challenge. It's like, well, no, the safety car did half the work for him. He probably could have gotten the points anyway, but people are saying this guy's the real deal, and they're thinking maybe he should go to Sauber. Possible, but less likely. I feel like you'd think that they would think first of all of Zane Maloney, who is an actual Sauber junior. He's been reasonable in Formula 2. He started strongly, fell off, and now he's coming back a bit. He finished 2nd in the race yesterday, and he would have won it without the safety car. But there's a lot of names like Mick as well. I know that Mick and Ralph were furious actually that they were not chosen for the Williams seat because apparently they just James just ignored them and said, oh, I think he said Mick isn't special was the way he described it. And so they're not happy. And Ralph, he speaks out a lot, which people find funny, but I understand it because obviously Michael is not in a position to be able to speak out and defend Mick, so it kind of falls to Ralph to do that. He's a contender for that seat. We've got Hulkenberg. People keep saying Vettel. I was like, I would love that, but that's not happening. Vettel is not coming back. After a 2-year absence, do you really think that that's going to work, especially in a car as abominably bad as that? Yeah, there are a lot of names for this seat, and it's like, does anyone really want that seat? Let's be honest.
Yeah, it looks like a bit of a disorganized project, but I'm sure that, they've got interest. I'm not really sure how they're going to make that decision. The names that you mentioned, probably the junior driver, Bortoleto, is the most promising. But it's a tough call. I mean, there's a lot of drivers out there that they can choose from, so we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Overall, that's not going to kick in until 2026. So, we'll see how this team performs next year. I think it's going to be more of the same until Audi come in.
Yeah, I mean, I said last year that for 2024, we're just going to pick up where we left off, which is, famous last words. And I'll say it again for 25, but maybe I'll be proven wrong. So let's do tops and flops. Tops of the weekend. Best driver, no question, Leclerc. And then I think Albon and Colapinto for me.
Yeah, I agree with the top two, Leclerc, Albon. Colapinto did a tremendous job, but I think Fernando Alonso, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I really think he outperformed his car. I mean, if you look at the fact that Alonso came out in the end on much newer hard tires with 5 laps to go and was only lapping as quickly as Albon and Magnussen, who had much older tires by 30 to 35 laps. That just tells you that Aston themselves didn't have a quick car. There's no way they could have made the one-stop work too, because we know that car degrades its tires so quickly. So Alonso really pushed the limits of his car and was just 2/10 away from getting a point in a car that was clearly slower than the Williams and the Haas. So, I believe I'm saying that, but yeah, I think Fernando Alonso would probably be my choice for the third spot. So I'd go Leclerc, Albon, just like you said, and then Alonso. But you know what? I'll defer to you because Colapinto, this was his first weekend, wasn't it, in a Formula One car? So, you know what? A good start. So, you know what? I'll go with Colapinto too. I'll defer to you on that one.
I mean, yeah, it's hard. I mean, going first to first can get you a position as the tops, but 11th to 11th, it's a difficult case to make for that one.
Sure. Yeah.
And then for the flops, well, Lando.
Yeah.
I guess Piastri did nothing wrong. It's just that they got a bit blindsided by the strategy.
Hulkenberg has to be on there. It was
Hulkenberg. No. Okay, we got it. Yeah, Lando, Ricciardo, Hulkenberg. Or maybe Magnussen, actually. But then Magnussen's kind of conflicting because he got himself banned, but he's still got in the points.
Yeah, I think Magnussen Magnussen's a tough one. Yeah, for sure Lando's on there. I'm going to put Russell on there. I'm going to go Lando and then Hulkenberg and then Russell. They all made like huge mistakes that materially impacted their race. And you know what? Lando was terrible because he had the quickest car, but at least he finished on the podium. Hulkenberg just drove a vicious race. I don't know what he did leading up to this weekend. He shouldn't do that again. That was just shocking. So worst was Hulkenberg, second worst was Lando, third worst was Mr. Russell. So that's my flops anyways.
Yeah, overall good race. Strategic blinder really put a spin on it. I mean, Monza, it's kind of touch and go in that it's been a lot of very average races in recent years, but it's an amazing circuit. Everyone loves it. It's one of the 4 kind of core circuits along with Spa, Silverstone and Monaco. And yeah, just great scenes to see Leclerc win again with Ferrari, this time in a car that isn't illegal. And just amazing scenes in that. And we'll see Baku, as I said, very similar characteristics, and I guess we'll just see if that produces a similar result.
Yep, should be good. I think it'll suit some cars better than others, but one thing will remain, Peter. McLaren will be the quickest car, and there will be yet again more pressure on Lando to capitalize on that. So can't wait for it. And yeah, we've got a championship battle as dysfunctional as it is on our hands.
Yeah, they haven't crashed yet, and where better to do that than Baku with those walls, to be honest.
Exactly.
Yeah. You've been listening to the DRS Train podcast. We're on YouTube and Spotify, and you can find us on Instagram and X at the DRS Train podcast. Make sure to tune in for our next episode. Stay safe, and we'll see you all next time.